There it goes. Yay! Sorry, I'm late. I was trying to get my internet sorted because it's been an absolute monsoon of a rain day here in Glasgow and it seems to have affected the internet. But we're here. Hello. How is everyone? I have a beer. I have my book. And ready to chat. So, what did you all think? I was reading through some of the comments on the page. And first of all, I want to preface this with, I'm reading these books along with you, and I often just choose books. Sometimes I'll go into my local, I haven't been in my local bookstore in a while, but this one I picked before all of this happened, and it was just browsing in my local bookstore and I saw it, and so I don't always know what it's going to be like, and it's in a very weird way sort of a companion piece to There's Something Wrong with Fleischman. I don't know what it is about why these kind of middle-aged people marching to the demise of their lives and marriages and sense of self. But hey, that's what happened. But I will say, so it says hilariously entertaining on the cover of this. And even though I loved this book, I didn't find it particularly hilarious. I find it really moving. I find it very sad, sometimes quite depressing. But I don't know that I would necessarily call it hilarious. It's really quite depressing in parts. And maybe it's just also this time and everything that's going on in the world. Just how unhappy so many people seem to be in their lives is quite a depressing factor. Hold on, I'm going to see. The lack of communication in both these relationships is very interesting. What were your thoughts? I was depressed by some of the subject matter. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a recurring theme in everything. I think this is just a flaw with the human condition, is that we are not able to verbalize how we feel and what our needs are, especially the people that are closest to us. And, I think that's why sometimes Melissa found it so much easier to talk to Damien, because he wasn't Michael. And she thinks that maybe there's a connection there. But and I loved this whole idea of like, sometimes there's people you should not touch. That sometimes you can have these connections with people, and sometimes sex just makes it so much more complicated. And this idea that there can be these great friendships that have nothing to do with sex and should never have anything to do with sex. It's such an important thing for us to remember. It's that you don't ruin things sometimes by crossing this line, Not hilarious, very depressing and true to life, Lucas the cat. Yeah. I don't know. It's a funny thing. I did find it a little bit of a slow starter. It took me a little while to sort of find the rhythm or find the pace. One of the first things that I loved about it, though, was just all the cultural references and the music. And by the way, I've made almost every artist that's been mentioned in this book, I've made a playlist on my Spotify that you should all go check out, because the music in this book is so beautiful. And I posted a picture of Chris Afili, and an artist that I really love, and just so much of the stuff about London. I've lived in London twice in my life, both for quite short times, and so I still think I have this not quite intimate knowledge with London, and I still have a bit of an unsolved love affair, or an unfinished love affair with it. And all just the kind of details and the descriptions of London, really, especially when basically I've seen the inside of this apartment for 3 months. It was nice to take that little mental journey and vacation. Let's see what some other people are saying. Everyone's saying, yes, not hilarious. I know, it's not funny. Or I just thought maybe I was missing out on the humor. I mean, there's moments where you're like, oh, that's really funny or sweet. But in general, not at all. Page 81. I love how somebody's like, page 81, go to that. Let's do that. So how do you get from that to this? Oh, yeah. It is so true. I mean, this is the thing. It's like relationships, as we all know, they never stay, constant. It's always this fluctuation of highs and lows. And that's why it's so hard, this idea of having two people commune and have their lives join, two very independent, we're all so independent and we all have our own different desires and needs and wants and, I suppose fantasies about what our life should look like or how it should be, and to try and combine that with another person, and not, because there's always things that you have to let go of, right? I mean, if you were just the master of your own destiny, you would do whatever you want, when you want, at any moment you want. But when you, oh my God, there's a tiny little fly has gone into my beer. That is so gross. But it's not going to spoil my beer because it's just a little fly. But yeah, it's just like, I think that's what also the richness of her ability to describe that, right? To be able to get into Melissa's head. I mean, I think Melissa and Michael for me were the relationship that obviously she explores with much more depth. And I think she captured that relationship much clearer. I think Stephanie and Damien for me were a little bit less explored, at least Stephanie. I feel like she sort of described Stephanie as a very clear person, but no one's kind of that one thing. So I don't know, I loved the kind of way that she was able to sort of take Melissa's point of view and then Michael's point of view and see these two things and realize that really they're just two people who are looking for understanding and appreciation and wanting to be seen. That's a huge thing, to have somebody see you and understand and realize that Melissa's, and I see this with so many of my friends who've had kids, and it's such a difficult thing to give up your life and your ambitions. And I was watching that Michelle Obama documentary, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's really, really good. And she talks about that, this thing of being a highly accomplished person, have worked so hard, have done all of these things, and then you have to give it all up for a moment or take a back seat. And I think that that's a real struggle for a lot of people. And I loved her descriptions of that with Melissa. Amanda Jenkins, it's so not hilarious. I think we could all agree on that. It's about finding yourself as you age. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Aren't we all so like... I loved that description of Melissa, like having this angel, and that she was so sure of it and so sure of her own indestructibility, or is that a word? I don't know. And we are, like, when we're younger, and it's like you feel everything for the first time and you experience everything for the first time, and it's all so visceral and potent and all of these things. And then, when you're going around the next decade or the next decade, it just, everything sort of loses its sharpness. And how do you, there's a good quote somewhere. Yes, I underlined this bit because it's, this is the Celt in me as well that loves these really depressing but yet poignant statements. The greatest challenge in life is not to die before we die. I mean, come on. Yeah. I mean, how do we not lose ourselves? It's so hard when we have so much stuff going on. There's work and there's life and there's all the stuff in society and there's politics and everything. And how do you retain your center? And how do you retain your spark and your zest for life and appreciation for life and remembering to, I loved that thing when she was talking about with Michael, and he was talking about how he didn't want to go to a certain country because it was too this or it was too that. And she was like, well, yeah, it's got these bad things, but then it's got like the waterfalls or the mountains or the sunsets. And it's that we shouldn't, or just to try and remember not to close the world off because of certain negative aspects, that there's beauty to be found everywhere. I guess I'm going to go for some more comments. Hi from Poland. Hi, Claudia. Hi. Very timely and hilarious. This is Nairi Dawn. Hilarious, not at all. Very timely and relevant. Reminded me of the time prior to my divorce and also how I felt while... Oh, I don't know how to read the rest of it. Okay. Yeah, I hope that it wasn't an uncomfortable read then. But I do think she really captured... Now I am back. Sorry, my connection is really bad today. I don't know why in a city that rains so much, when it rains, sometimes it really does a number with the internet. Okay. JJJ541 Judy found it rather sad as well. I agree. Clanier 1959. I wonder if the pace of the book was to emphasize the depressing nature of the book. I don't know that that's what Diana Evans was going for. Maybe. I mean, I think I actually loved... It was that chapter when Michael was describing falling in love with Melissa was when I really fell into its rhythm, I suppose. And I think also in some ways I wondered, if I'd started the book with this chapter and started the book with the good and then felt its loss, how would that have worked? It was just kind of something just in terms of how the plot or the timeline was laid out. Sometimes I think if you've lost something that you don't know what it was, when you go back, it was like, it wasn't until I really realized how special their love had been and how deeply he'd loved her and how he was so just blown away by her, that then it made it so much more tragic. Because I think unless you know what you've lost, it doesn't really have so much of an impact. So I think the book really came alive for me then, because I was like, oh, right, okay, so this is what we're dealing with. This is the kind of thing we're losing. Sassenach Nicole said, I'd rather be single than in a shitty relationship, to be honest. Yeah, I think that's generally a good a good piece of advice for yourself. Martina Pryor, 06, was very honest, organic and relatable. Agreed. Sam Daily Life, I thought it was terrible Michael left Melissa instead of helping her get the help she needed. Clearly she was dealing with postpartum psychosis. Yeah, but it feels like she did get the help, and maybe the suffocating nature of their relationship was also what was stopping her get help. I think sometimes also you have to shake something up if something's not working in your life. There's something about changes or breaks that allows you to then sort of take stock. I think sometimes it's very hard for people to work within the framework of something that has either enabled or hidden or added to a problem. I'm not a psychologist. This is just my musings. That's just, don't take it from me. Lovely narrative, yet a complex story about friendships, relationships, careers, kids coming into the picture, and how that changes your person as a couple. Not all relationships survive. That is true. Thoughts on them using music to where they are in the relationship, like John Legend's Ordinary People. That's one of the things I loved about this book. And I had a lot of fun making the playlist. Sometimes I would put it in while I was reading, and then sometimes I would sort of forget because I was just like in a roll. So I'd have to go back and pick out the songs. And I've purposefully left the Michael Jackson. That's just a personal choice. I don't know how anybody feels about art versus artist, and I have my own personal thing. I don't necessarily think I think you can separate artist from art, but I also think about giving money to estates, and I just purposefully didn't put it on my Spotify, but that's my own personal. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I think we're afraid of hurting the ones closest to us. Maybe why we don't or can't talk to those closest to us. Yeah, but I think, it's that thing of sometimes we fear hurting someone so much that we avoid the micro cuts, right? Instead of hurting them a little, that we try and avoid those little cuts so much that it just builds up, and that eventually one day you just slash out and then you've severed an arm. But I do think we end up hurting the people that we love the most, because it's inevitable. I mean, we get so much into each other's shit, and it's so entangled and messy, and you would never, I mean, I would never reveal my anger the way I sometimes might do with anyone other than the person that I'm most in love with and intimate with, Let's see what else. Somebody was trying to tell me how to use this thing. You can use the question mark down the bottom to see if there's more questions. I don't even know. Oh, look, there we go. This is a whole new world, guys. I'm seeing these questions in a different way rather than just flying past me on the screen. Do I listen to music while reading? Not really, like sometimes a little, but I find I get very distracted. If it's something that's not something that I really love, and like the lyrics are really important to me, I can maybe have it in the background. But like even if the TV is on in the background, I get too distracted. Which is why I can't listen to audible books. And it would be such a good thing, to have in the car, but I daydream, and then I realize that I don't know how I got the last 2 miles going, but B, I miss so much, and it kind of, it doesn't work for me. The crooked house metaphor of a rocky marriage. And do I think of the house as a character or crooked? Yeah. It's really interesting because it was such a surprising element of the book, this whole kind of like horror element that came in, and with Lily and sorry, I'm blanking on their daughter's name. But you always think with these things, are they all a figment of your imagination? Or are you more susceptible to, viewing this? I do think that she was, cracking up to a certain extent, that the pressures and the things that she had let go of, and probably postpartum, I think all of these things were compounding. But I do think there was probably something in that house. Yeah. What are my thoughts about relationships affecting your identity, both spouse and children? Well, I don't have children, so I can't speak to that. I do think when you connect your life with another person, and I've had a few long-term relationships in my life, I do think there is a certain, and I used to be bad at this when I was younger, and I think I spent a couple of years in my early 30s single, and it was the best thing I ever did for myself, because I think I used to lose myself in relationships, and I think that that's quite a common thing that people do. But I think because I had those years being single, I sort of was able to change certain patterns and habits. But anyway, I think it happens. I think in certain extent you have to make a compromise about a lot of things, right? Two people want to go down a road. One person wants to go that way, one person wants to go that way, and you have to figure out a way of going down this road together. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think it's a thing where you constantly have to communicate and make sure that, you can't just assume that somebody's something somebody said a year or two ago is going to be the way that they are always going to want certain things. I think people change, and people circumstances will change how you feel about your life or how you feel about things, and so you have to constantly make sure that you're checking in and being like, okay, are we still on the same path together? Like, are we still wanting the same things? Like, let's make sure that this is what we both want. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on that. Somebody's asked me quite a few times what do I think of the title of the book. I like the title of the book. I think it is very much, these are situations a lot of people can relate to. And I think that that's sort of the tragedy of it, right? That everyone in their 20s has these beautiful dreams for what their life is going to be. And it's not that, I think that the thing is to realize that your dreams have to change in some ways. Or do they? I don't know. I mean, sometimes I just think that, inevitably life doesn't turn out exactly the way you want it. And, not every single thing is going to work. And instead of viewing that as a failure, I guess it's important to try and realize that, okay, like, well, it didn't work out exactly how I thought, but how can I make what I have really beautiful? And that's really hard. I think that's what we all have to try and do. GCJC 1888. They were insisting on their youth, ? I think it's hard to let go of I don't know, because what does it mean to let go of your youth? I think you have to retain a certain youthfulness, and there is no rules to how you live your life. I think that's also one of the things that I loved about this book is this idea of, well, not everything, Melissa and Stephanie have very different ideas on what it is to be a woman and what it is to be a mother and what it is to be a wife. And I think this idea of you have to let go of your youth and settle down, and I think that can be in and of itself a trap. in some ways because you're assuming a kind of role that maybe you don't have to, you know, and maybe people do let go of things because they think they're supposed to act in a certain way. Okay, let's see. Oop, more questions. What's your t-shirt? I'm trying to figure it out. My t-shirt is dirty. It says Bua. It's a lovely bar in New York that is owned by my lovely friend Mark and some other people, and it's on, I'm going to forget, it's in the East Village. I'm going to forget which street. God, that's terrible. 10th Street? In the East Village anyway. It's a very old t-shirt, but it's an oldie but a goodie. For the Loving of Glasgow said, I love the quote about relationships being like a diamond. They just need to be polished again. Yeah, I like that one too. There's a couple of other quotes that I liked. Why don't people live the way they're supposed to live? It should be the easiest thing in the world. And I guess that goes back to the idea of not falling into traps about having to, like, I don't know, conform to certain ideas, I guess. What else? I thought the whole quote about football was very funny. How football, the reason, I mean, I like football, so I also agree with the fact that Hazel was like, women like it too. But the whole sex and football analogy I thought was quite funny, and I've got very itchy nose for some reason. Did I already know the author? No. I was, like I said at the beginning, I was in my bookstore. I love to just go and ramble in bookstores, and it's one of the things I'm missing quite a bit right now, but I love, especially when they've got staff recommendations or staff picks. Two of my LA bookstores that I'll give shout outs to, Spotlight in Los Feliz and Book Soup in West Hollywood, have always great staff recommendations. And it was just something about the cover that really struck me and drew me in. And what I've been trying to do, it was on my bookshelf for a while. It was on sort of like to read list. And what I've been trying to do is I want to alternate with this book club, female, male writers. And I think it's really important. What I've been trying to do is pick writers from different backgrounds, different ethnicities. And my plan was for this next book that we're going to read, my plan was to go outside of the UK and outside of America. But given everything that's happened in the last week or two, I thought it was really important for myself to head back to America in terms of what I'm reading and read more African-American writers. And I'm going to pick a male writer this week because I'm obviously Diana is female. And the week, I keep saying week, it's month. But I will, after this, I want to start going to further field and other countries in Europe. India, who has some of the most amazing writers. I love Indian literature. South America. And I just want us all, if you are happy enough to come along on the ride with me, to start expanding our horizons with the people we read. And one of the things actually, when I was trying to choose this next book, that I discovered, to my quite disappointment, was that so few African American writers, so few of their novels are translated in multiple languages. Most of them, if they were translated into Spanish. Some were translated into French, but very rarely were they translated into both, and very rarely were they translated into all. Obviously, some of the people like Toni Morrison or Maya Angelou or Alice Walker were, but I feel like, if a lot of you probably have read them, and if not, I recommend it. I haven't read all of their stuff, but they're really good. So what I'm going to tell you now is what we've chosen, or what I've chosen, and I'm probably going to butcher his name. So it's Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. And I'll put it up. I didn't actually receive my book in time. So I thought also, when I was kind of going through, I thought there's a BBC Music radio show called The Chain, where every song has to have some sort of relation to the last one. And I feel like, because Ordinary People was somewhat of a companion piece to There's Something Wrong with Fleischman, I thought that this book is sort of a companion piece in some ways, at least I haven't read it yet, but from the description, to On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. That was a letter from a son to a mother, and this is a letter from a father to a son. So I figured that was kind of a nice little connection that we could have. So I think that, I don't know, have you any last few questions for me? And do I know some Brazilian writers? This is the other thing. I love suggestions. So if you guys have suggestions for me, I am more than happy to write them in the comments on the next Instagram post. And we can do some chooses. Paul Coelho, he's Brazilian. I think I read all of his books when I was a teenager, or whatever ones were out. So let me see. Sorry, everything's being very slow. Who was my favorite character? I suppose that's a good last question, maybe. James Baldwin, yes. Love, actually. He's amazing. Who was my favorite character? I mean, had to be sort of Melissa. I felt like we got to know Melissa the most. I kind of feel like she was the central character, and as someone who has been somewhat of a roaming soul in my life, maybe I connected with her the most, I think. Yeah. So, I think, hello from Dubai, hello. I think that's it. These questions don't come up in like a timeline. Maybe I can do that. No, don't want to turn them off. I just want them to come in as they're coming in. And here's the last thing, because somebody just asked, do you think Michael and Melissa could have prevented the breakup of their marriage? I'm holding out for that they get back together. I'm just going to say, maybe in a year, I'm going to be a bit like Alice, and I'm going to be like, yeah, they just need time. Melissa needs to sort her head out, and maybe they'll come back together. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I love having these weird one-sided discussions with you all, because I just love to talk at myself. But no, and now that I've seen there's a question button, it's just we're learning as we go along here. But yeah, so thank you very much, and I will do our next chat the beginning of July. How is it already almost July? What? And I hope you all get to read the next book. I think it's incredibly important that everybody try and understand what's going on in the world right now. And doing that by having empathy and compassion and looking at themselves and looking at their own circles and their own workplaces and finding out where they can do better. And I think we all can. And, I'm trying to listen as much as I can and read as much as I can and understand where I can make a difference. And so I would urge you all to do the same in your own lives, and let's make this moment a real positive spark that lights a fire that is going to be known for the rest of history as the moment that created equality, true equality for people, because that's what we need. So with that, sending you all love. Thank you for joining, and I will talk to you beginning of first week in July. Okay, bye.